Welcome to the Business Legends Podcast, where we interview business leaders and entrepreneurs so that you can learn from their successes, pump up your own inspiration, and meet the people that make change happen. I'm the host of the show, Reese Arlen, accompanied by my bestie, the hostess with the mostest, who missed me last week because he was busy fixing his house and all those broken pipes and stuff like that.
My pipes exploded.
But, you know, from my perspective, I just see that as excuses. Like, Business Legends is it's more important than you. It just is. It just
That's
is.
fair.
Yeah, but it's Christian. You know, he's here. He's here today.
Yep, happy to be back.
Yeah, welcome back, sir. And today, we're accompanied by the great business legend himself. Basically, the president of the universe is from what I understand, but a guy that has done and seen it all, been everywhere in the world, and we're lucky enough to call friend, Mr. John Bly with Aprio, like Apple. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me, and glad you're back, Christian. Wouldn't have been the same without you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Excited I'm on this week and not last week.
Yeah, no kidding. I was like,
I don't know if I could take so much of just one of you.
You know, I
definitely level him out.
Yeah. Once the coffee starts going in, I kind of, I start to be a little bit more and more. But I was struggling last week with all setting up everything and like figuring it out all by myself. Like I was lonely. Why don't you love me?
Well, that's why you have a partner, right?
That's exactly
partnerships are about that. There's strengths and weaknesses in business partnerships, and obviously that's part of it, right? You picked him up last week when he had a personal situation, but I'm sure it happens in business for you guys all the time.
That's true. And when you say strengths and weaknesses, he is the weakness, and I'm just kidding. No, we have plenty. You're absolutely right. We're very lucky, and one of the things about us is that we're best friends before business partners, and everybody said that, like, oh, don't do it. Don't get into business with your best friend. Like, you'll hate each other. And I was like, I hate him now. Like, what's the difference here? But enough about us. Tell us about Aprio, which we're relatively sure is just taking over the universe. So we want in. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, so Aprio is a top 25 accounting, consulting, and advisory firm headquartered in the Southeast. We have offices stretching from Florida to New York City, and then we miss a whole bunch of the middle of the country, and we skip out to San Francisco, and we've got an office out in San Jose and San Francisco.
Interesting.
Yeah, it goes with our tech and private equity strategy, and that sort of fits us. And we're focused on the lower middle market, anything from startup entrepreneurs who may be looking for growth strategy all the way to the couple $100 million business that's looking for an exit over the next few years or a family transition. And we're focused more on the advisory. Certainly we do lots of tax and audit compliance, but the reality is we're in it for the relationship to help the business get to whatever it wants next. And that's our focus is, what's next.
It's so incredible. One of the things that I will honestly tell you, I'm a big fan, by the way. If you're going to talk junk about somebody, do it to their face and not behind. So I'm going to talk no, I'm just kidding. But one of the things that I find impressive about you is that, just being real with you, I don't really have much interest in like accounting and stuff. I don't do the numbers. As a matter of fact, Christian can attest to this. When I first came into Business Marketing Solutions Group, I said I got one rule. I don't deal with the books. I'm just not going to do it. Like, I'm not going to do it. They make me cry. I have to sing myself little songs to sleep and pour wine and cuddle up in a blanket. And I can't do it. But even from the first moment that I met you, number one, you make it very exciting, and number two, you go back into one of these, I'll call it just business acumen type skills, which is relationships. What you effectively do is accounting, but what you said is that you work on this relationship to develop a consulting type manner, and so your target not only expands but it strengthens on that as well. So can you speak to that? Do you have any? And I don't know if you've done any work on this. I'm sure you have with your. By the way, hold on. So he is like the grandmaster of all things EO, and he's been an EO for 15 years, but he has the 30-year shirt. So he is that important. They doubled his time in EO.
I volunteered so much it counted as 2 years sometimes.
Yeah, you're 2 for 1. The 2 for 1 special. So have you done any looking back at like company values, company whatever shift types of stuff with Aprio?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, if you look at like values, if you're not talking about the business value, if you're talking about the values of the way they actually operate, we spend a lot of time internally, but from our clients' perspective, we actually spend time with them thinking about what they want to do over the next 3 to 5 years and what they've done in the past. And certain sizes, you guys are a growing business, certain sizes cause challenges.
Sure.
And we've seen enough of that history to say, here's the things we think you're going to expect. Doesn't happen every time, right? But, probably the 80-20 rule, 80% of the businesses deal with these particular issues at certain sizes, and we can help them get in front of it. And some of it is, value-based stuff in the fact that maybe you didn't need to be as specific about the values when you were 5 people, but when you're 50 people, it's a little bit more important when you're hiring at a pace that's pretty rapid that you can't always even know as the entrepreneur, founder, owner, leadership team, whatever, that you don't even know all the people. You got to be able to instill it in some way that they understand the value and where the business is headed.
Are you telling me a growth plan and accounting matters when you have a business?
What?
It does. It's a random thing to learn today, but yes.
I love it. I really do, man. So how did you come up? So I was looking at your website, and there's just so much stuff on there.
Stalker.
So how did you get so many services inside of your business and still providing a high quality?
Expertise. It is a people business. So you find the people and then add the service. Does that make sense? So like instead of saying, hey, look, we really want to get into this business, we're going to take a non-expert and make them an expert in that particular service line. We never did that. We always found the expert and brought them to the business, whether they were internal or external. And that's consistently how we've grown. We've also looked at it primarily starting with, what do the clients need? What are we constantly hearing from clients? What are their pain points? And if we can find a way to solve them, it makes us stickier, right? It's less likely they're going to, but it also provides value to the client, which is the number one thing. If it doesn't provide value to the client, then why are we doing it? So then we say, okay, that's XYZ service. In one case, it's merchant services, for instance, that we do. And the merchant services provides a lot of value to the client because it saves them money. It also saves them effort, time, all that sort of stuff.
Headaches.
Yeah. And it's streamlined with their accounting the way we do it. And so the reality is then we had to go find the expert.
Poetry in motion, by the way.
Yeah. Then we had to go find the expert, right? So we didn't just start it. We said, here's the service the clients are complaining about. Here's the pain point. Who's the experts that we know in our circle, and then we chase for 6, 12, 18, 24 months until that person believes that we're the right fit, or that, maybe we're chasing 10 or 15 people until the right person decides that, come join Aprio. Then we launch the service. So that's sort of how we go about making that decision.
That's an incredible model. I always, when I listen to people in every form of entrepreneur, no matter what scale, I feel like there's always like little kernels of knowledge and nuggets of truth, and I'm a big believer that success leaves clues as well. But one of the things that I overheard you say is that when you take on a new client, one of the first things you said, backtrack 20 seconds ago, or it's more like 2 minutes, but you said, where does the client want to be over the next 3 to 5 years? And so by having that forward-thinking methodology, you're giving them an effective growth plan that says, okay, this is the types of stuff that I want to offer, the types of environments that we want to behave in order to achieve the success that you want. Because I think that to have long-standing relationships with clients, you can't just service them where they are. You have to service them where they want to be, type of thing.
Yeah, for sure. It's the Wayne Gretzky quote, right?
Yep.
You gotta be where the puck's gonna be, and that's how you score the goals, right? Essentially, and so you can't just be there. You got to be in the future thinking, and if you're not in your client's headspace of where they're going to be, it's really hard to serve them. How do you know what they're going to be doing, and are you the right fit?
Yeah.
I mean, there are clients that 3 to 5 years from now, if they say X, Y, or Z, we're not the right fit.
Yeah.
And we're totally upfront with that. I'd rather know that now while we're talking on the front end than find it out after 2 years. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. It also kind of reminds me of like dress for the job you want type of thing. I'm an entrepreneur. I think I'm unhireable by any business because I'm such a punk or whatever. And I dress like one too, but definitely a punk. That was one of the things when Christian and I sat down for our business. I said one of the values that I want to be founded on, I want people to be themselves, and I want them to look presentable and nice so that I would never be embarrassed to bring them anywhere. But we're a professional white, or what is it called, white collar type of business, and I don't care if people wear jeans. I'm comfortable in jeans, dude. Like, I don't want them to look like rock stars on the scene or anything like that. Well, I might could be convinced though, as long as they look really cool. But it's all about having the right place to put forward with that stuff. How do you? So you said you kind of hire people based on the need, and you find the expert. Has your business done any pivoting? I'm sure it's changed drastically over the last 20 years you've been in business, but what I'm speaking of specifically is, have you ever taken a person, and gosh, you're in accounting, so you know this a billion times better than I ever will, but have you ever taken a person, say, from like the merchant services offerings to like bookkeeping and so on and so forth with that?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, we just saw a guy yesterday in our Charlotte office who I hadn't seen in probably 8 weeks because he's been working remote, and which is fine. And he switched actually from our audit team, audited financials, going out to clients, helping them certify their books, to our forensic and fraud team since October. So he's really excited because it's something he's always been passionate about, young guy, and a lot younger than me anyway. And, might not be younger than you guys, but a lot younger than me. And
So you're 30, so he's like 28. I understand. Okay, got you.
And he's really excited about what he's working on. I mean, he came into my office and was talking to me about who do I know in these certain sectors of bankers, who do I know in these certain sectors of attorneys, because now he's focused on how can he develop new business in the Charlotte market related to that particular niche in our fraud and forensic. And so we do that fairly regularly, I would say. I mean, it's not an everyday occurrence, but it's probably 15, 20 people a year on our business who decide they want to do something else. And good employees are tough to get.
Yeah.
And we would all rather have them change within our organization
Sure.
and find whatever their next is rather than go find it somewhere else.
100%. 100%. So I have a question. It might be a little hard. To answer.
No hard questions today.
No hard questions. Well, you
Can I
already signed the
plead
waiver.
the fifth in this?
Yes, you absolutely can. There's
You already-
no whiskey in our coffee.
You already
Can't do
signed the
this.
waiver.
Oh, yeah. It's too late now. Look, the backdrop's there, dude. You got to answer this.
So, do you think your company could have gotten to the success it is now, without acquiring?
Yeah, it's a good question. So just background for your listeners, did a lot of acquisitions from 2004 to 19, 15 of them in 15 years. I think for us, the way it would have been possible, depending on your definition of success, we could not have gotten there as fast as we did. We couldn't have gotten the team members probably as excited to stick around for a slower growth, because if you look at professional services, generally once you get to some size, the growth is typically 8 to 15% max. And if you're talking about, a 15-person, 20-person organization, that might not excite the young 25-year-old who's looking for a growth path. What was exciting for our team, and has been continuously, is that they know that whatever size we are today and whatever their current trajectory is as a career path, it can change pretty rapidly because we're focused on opportunity creation for everybody. And so I think we probably couldn't have recruited the talent. We probably couldn't have retained as much as we did, and we definitely wouldn't have gotten there as fast. Could we have gotten there? Yes, but it would have probably been an extra decade.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense, because one of the things I think of immediately is like, to get there now, like I just think of our company, like we keep adding different verticals, and like every time we add a different vertical, we technically have to train up a couple people, create a manager of that, and then hire better and better and better people and more people every time to grow that one vertical, right? So just to do that one thing could take us 3 or 4 years, where we could just buy it.
Yep.
An already existing, already built setup.
But we're awesome at doing podcasts now. So that's
yeah, so that makes a lot of sense to me. That makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense to me. I appreciate that.
Yeah, Christian, it's one of the things about us, and Christian will tell you this as well, is that, see, I'm talking smack in front of your face, is that him and I are very different people. He's very risk prone. Both physically, he breaks something every other week, it seems like. But
Pipes most recently.
Exactly. And I'm kind of risk averse, so I think it leads us to make good decisions when it comes time to taking a step with that. What does that look like for you? So you did 15 businesses over 15 years. Now, you don't have to answer this, but I would love for you to. 15 years, 15 businesses. Were any of those just super gems or super duds, or were they all was it 15 awesome steps for you?
It was definitely not 15 awesome steps.
Okay.
The first 4 we did between 2004 and 2006 to get to some scale. We went from my wife and I working out of our house to in June, that was August of 2004 to June of 2006, we went from 0 to 15 people. And those were all amazing. And then we did one in later in 2006 that was a dud. we relied on past history to tell us that these are the sorts of things we needed to do to make sure we were comfortable, and those things all checked out. We didn't do some other things. So what the things we didn't do is we didn't focus on some of the culture. We didn't focus on some of the quality of the work, and those things turned out to be a learning experience. I mean, we certainly changed we went through a lot of pain in '07. And we then changed our process by the time we went back to the table in 2009 for our next transaction. We changed what we did, and we spent way more time, which is why my book starts with culture, because it was a learning lesson on mergers and acquisitions, and that I needed to be more focused on culture. And so we did that throughout. So that was an absolute, pain point learning experience. But fortunately, we were small enough that it didn't, didn't cause us so much pain that we're not in business. It just caused us a lot of mental angst and a lot of extra work.
Do you find that when you buy a company, you leave it as it is, or you pull it in and force it into your culture?
So we spend time up front making sure that the cultures will be similar enough that it won't be either of those things.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense? Yeah. So we don't want to leave anybody on their own, and we don't want to force the culture. So it's got to be pretty closely aligned. And I'll give you an example.
I was going to say, can you provide?
Yeah, I'll give you an example. So we have, this sounds crazy, we have 31 fundamentals of our business. Okay. And we practice them every week.
Well, for accountants, that's like 3, but I was kidding. 31.
And we practice them every week. Okay, so what does practice looks like? Well, on Monday, an email goes out to everybody at the organization from somebody who wrote about that week's fundamental. Okay, so last week's was be relentless about improvement. Then on Wednesday every week, everybody gets a quiz. We outsource this on a creation of an example with an A, B, C, D answer. We track who fills it out and who doesn't, and our leadership team, part of their compensation is whether they get the answer or not.
Wow! And
every single Wednesday, 52 weeks.
Do they know that the people?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. And so you have to practice it at the start of every meeting internally that has at least 3 people in it. You must cover the fundamental of the week for at least 2 minutes.
Wow.
So we'll talk about. I personally will talk about be relentless about improvement during that week, probably 15 times in meetings. So it's really easy to understand. So the real life example. So that tells you how we play it out, right?
Yeah.
So the real life example, we merged in a firm in Nashville in 2020, and we went to their office in January of 20. Myself, Richard Kopelman, and a guy by the name of Brad McKeever. And we went to their office in Nashville. We flew in, and Richard sat down and shared this fold out of our fundamentals. And they weren't really that interested. They tell us this now. They weren't really that interested in the merger.
They didn't tell you this in 2020.
Right. In the merger, they took the meeting because we're friends.
Yeah.
They weren't really that interested. When we put down the fundamentals, the entire conversation changed. They thought we would only spend like an hour together and whatever. But since we started with that and we talked about culture for the first hour, they changed because they're really big on culture, which we didn't really know either. We just knew that if they wanted to be a part of us, they had to understand what was sort of key and core to us. And it changed. And by the end of the meeting, they were in. They knew that this was that what we believed in and how we practiced, not the exact same, but it was so similar that they were like, oh, these guys are also different, and they also get how important the culture is and the things you're trying to do. And so that's a real life example of
that's incredible. And 31 fundamentals. This may sound like a somewhat invasive question, but do you feel like there's a reason I'm asking this too, and I'll tell you what that reason is after. But do you feel like any of your fundamentals, if let's say a business consultant came in and they looked at Aprio from the top to the bottom, do you feel like any of those 31 are silly or something that is important to you, but it might not be important to anybody else, or you think they're all like strong core values type thing?
I think they're like best practice business.
Wow.
Like, for instance, number 31 is keep things fun.
Okay.
Be relentless and proud improvement. I mean, things that are really core to like running a good business. We didn't create something that was so unique that it was unbelievable. I think what's in our special sauce is how we execute, helping people remember that those 31. So another great example, one of our fundamentals is speak straight. It's really easy to have a difficult conversation in Aprio.
Wow. I mean, that makes sense.
Because you say, hey, I'm going to speak straight here.
Yeah.
And everybody knows that that's one of our fundamentals. So
Yeah.
the fact that I'm going to tell you something that you may not have heard, there's no beating around the bush. There's none of that. We can just say we're going to speak straight. And we all agree that that's part of our fundamentals and that's who we are. And so it's really easy to have a difficult conversation.
That makes a lot of sense. At BMSG, we say that in a slightly different way, more marketing related, but we say no bullshit.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it is. So the reason that I asked that is because when we first got into business, I came up with all these visions and things, and of course Christian did as well. Christian's what I would call an early adopter on things, and I'm like I'm not a late adopter. I wouldn't say. He might say that, but
Definitely an adopter.
but it takes me a while to buy into things. I'll just put it that way. It takes him like a second. If you listen to past podcasts, he's like all about virtual reality.
So
and
I definitely have an automation question for you later.
Drives me insane. But the reason I asked that is because when we went into business, one of the fundamentals of our business is that I wanted to be as paperless as possible. And to me, that feels silly. It sounds silly, but I mean, gosh, all the contracts that we've had and things that we've written, we've easily saved 100,000 sheets of paper, if not more.
Yeah, and the only people who have ever made us print off anything
is the government.
We
work on government contracts, and we have to send in, and so we're probably not saving the earth.
That's all right. If it makes you feel any better, the IRS still faxes us stuff. So
yeah,
we're probably one of the few businesses in the country that still has a fax machine, and we have to because of the IRS.
The big Green New Deal should be stop making us print 7 copies of a 60-page RFP document.
Yeah, so when I just he's exactly right. When I turned in an RFP beginning of December, I had to send 7 copies, and it was a 60-page document. And so when I tell you that mail thing was like that, I mean, and I hated it. I hated doing it. But when I'm coming from school, and it was just so unnecessary, where we could do it electronically. But one of our
if it makes you feel any better, they're not doing it via paper anymore in school.
Well, that does make me feel better. It does make me feel better.
That tells you how old he is, by the way. For those of you listeners.
Rude. I saw a meme the other day. It had the 5 computers, and it said, "Which one do you remember in school?" And it was all the way back to like the box.
Show your age. Yep.
And then he's like, "We didn't have computers."
Yep.
Yep.
But one of the things that has then led to is that if there's like a new software or I think last we checked, we use like 50 different software legitimately, and if there's like a new software, one of our core values, fundamentals, is that we're going to give it a shot. In fact, I just sent you one yesterday, by the way, which I'm sure he hasn't checked. But,
I think he was telling me earlier that you automatically go to spam. I'm not sure.
Yes, I might as well.
I think he said he's got Outlook.
No, I made him a personal trash folder.
Yeah, it's basically what it is. If you look in his email, you have like a Reese folder, and there's legitimately like 6 years of business, like 8,000 emails in there. They're unread, and I just.
If I want to hear anything from you, I'll call you, man.
Yeah, and that's what drives me nuts. Let's just talk about that for a second. So I was preparing some email templates for him, and this was when he was dealing with the pipe bust issue or whatever. And I emailed them over, and I texted him about it. And I said, "Hey, those are in your inbox." And then I called him about it later. I said, "Hey, just so you know, those email templates are in your box." And what did he do yesterday? He calls me about it. He's like, "Hey, man, where'd you put those?" And I'm like, "I'm gonna kill you."
Well, I mean, if you had access to my email, would you not just load them in my template base? It makes a lot more sense.
I mean, that is. Oh, it is what it is. The day in the life of Christian. So what's your automation question, by the way?
The automation question.
About this.
So
this is what it's like every day.
Most accountants can't answer this question, but since you have so much kind of like in line.
It's going to be good. I like the way the setup's going.
Yeah, this setup's excellent.
No, but I really think you're probably the only one that can answer it, really. Because you have so many different things tied together.
Yeah.
How do you feel about automation in the accounting world? Like, I feel like it's one of the last business services that hasn't really been automated very well. Everything's input manually,
like consolidation,
times.
Bookkeeping, stuff like that.
But your company seems to have a lot of different things all tied and integrated to the accounting system. Do you see that process for companies like yours? Do you feel that process getting more and more automated every day?
Oh yeah, I mean, we're doing a ton on automation, and we're doing it with clients too. We do, so for instance, as an example, in our dental segment, so we have a segment that all these people do is work on, dental clients. We've got about 50 people in that division.
Oh wow!
And we're the third largest provider, I believe, in the U.S. For dental services. And so, as an example, we have found a way to help automate for the dentists the combination of their practice management software, which is key to them, a combination of their bank account and QuickBooks online only, and pull that all into a real-time dashboard that ends up on their phone.
Wow.
as an example, right? And so it's the same with pulling their bank account transactions into QuickBooks, coding. Let's call it 95% of what their transactions are coded automatically, real-time basis. So yes, it is definitely now. That's at size and scale. Does that make sense? We don't have that. We don't have that for every single one of our segments, but our dentists have very specific needs, and more than most of our other segments, they're really focused on KPIs in real time, which is kind of fascinating. And
it is fascinating.
They do a lot.
I wouldn't have expected that.
Dentists do a lot of study groups in college,
right,
and in med school, and then they continue it all the way through. So, like, if you look at your regular dentist, I would bet they go to a monthly meeting with 8 or 10 of their buddies,
they do,
and boys or girls, and
generally at the golf course, but yes,
over lunch, really,
yeah,
and they do like a 2-hour meeting on a Friday usually, because a lot of dentists are closed on Fridays, and they spend time going over their metrics and what they're seeing, and they really do a good job. They don't see each other as competitors. More business models should actually follow that, because too many of us think everybody is a competitor.
Right.
So anyway, so at size and scale, it makes a lot of sense to automate. It's really challenging for one business to do it on their own, but it's a lot easier for us.
So on the scarier side, that might be a dumb question. Do you think the government's ever going to try to automate all the way down to companies like yourself?
I mean, I certainly think they should. It's done in a lot of foreign countries, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. I've always thought it could be done.
It's done. So, like individual tax returns, as an example, in a lot of foreign countries, the government files them on your behalf.
That's kind of what I thought.
Maybe not on the business side, but on the individual side, because they already have a lot of the data. They're already getting copies of your W-2s, your 1099s, your mortgage interest statement, right? So they already have lots of the data already, because the provider's sending it. So, unfortunately, though, the current state of our government, for a long time, is a lot of gridlock, and so it's really hard to do that. If you look, I mean, I just told you the IRS is still faxing us information.
Yes.
I mean, can you imagine trying to automate something? I mean, it seems almost impossible.
And they failed at the post office too, which is, how do you lose money when private companies make so much money doing it?
It's insane. I mean, there's so much, and we certainly probably shouldn't, because we're probably going to get our phones tracked or something from this conversation. But it's amazing how many things I feel like could be improved upon on a grand scale. I'll just put it that way. So very good. John, I feel like I could talk to you for the next 3 hours, but alas, it is our time to go. I always end up Business Legends with a funny question. I got one today. This is normally where I stall, by the way. But given our conversation previous, what do you think the absolute coolest car that somebody in the marketing profession could have is?
Whew. The coolest car in the marketing profession.
Yeah. If you're in the marketing profession, so if you're let's extend this, and I'm gonna buy you some time here, right? So let's say it's a business expense company car up to, we'll call it $100,000, including wildness and things like that. And I'll tell you why after the show.
I think if you're looking for marketing, I think the Rivian, the new
the new electric
EVs
truck
are interesting as a business model. And if you're a marketing person, certainly it stands out, right?
Yeah.
If you're trying to stand out and look unique, it's going to look unique, because I think they're going to go bankrupt. And so you'll probably have one of the only 10,000 that exist.
Yeah.
I think something like that's really unique.
Yeah.
So you don't have stock in them, I'm assuming.
I do not.
You want to short it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you look at Fisker. Fisker is another company that say, okay. Well, anyway, I'll tell you on air why I asked that. Clifford Blanquisette, which is a great friend of ours, he'll be on the show, I think 2-1 or something. I don't know, one of them days in the next month. We'll just put it that way. And he drives this giant, jacked up. It's like a Jeep that's cooler than a Jeep, but it's called the Apocalypse, and it has like a foghorn. And it had the rear end of it has 8 wheels or whatever. You have to look this up, but we've been tossing the idea back and forth of how cool would it be to have a wild car.
Yeah, it has a train horn on it.
Yeah,
literally a train horn. He pushes a button and it fills a bag with air.
Yeah.
It takes 10 seconds, and then he makes sure nobody's around, because it's actually it could terrify somebody who's a little older.
Oh my gosh!
And then he blows the horn, and I'm just like.
Yeah.
Blown.
That's awesome.
By the way, the correct answer was Jeep, so you got that wrong. But all right, last question. Accounting, what's the coolest car?
Anything electric, because of just some of the tax credits. So you gotta, you can't just tell clients to do it. You gotta go get the electric vehicles to get your own tax credits. So you gotta put your money where your mouth is.
That was a great answer. John, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and man, I'm sure we'll see you soon.
It's great. Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
It's been great.